Frozen for drug smuggling made me who I am now. Michaela Macaron on life after the Peru tour. She became famous as a drug mart with a memorable hairstyle. But what has Michael Macaron learned from being jailed for attempted cocaine smuggling in 2013? On the 6th of August 2030, two 20-year-old women were arrested at Travel International Airport in Lima, Peru. Michael Macaron and Malaysia with luggage contained 1.5 million pounds worth of cocaine. Michael has been convicted to attempts to smuggle the drugs from Peru to Spain by a man she met in Ibiza. Michael and Malaysia hadn't known each other prior to being paired up by the criminals arranging the cocaine's journey. Both pleaded guilty to drug smuggling and were sentenced to over 6 years imprisonment in the notorious Anconto jail. In 2016, both women were granted early release, and since then, Michaela has been vocal about her story and how she's changed since she became known as the drug smuggler with the giant bun in her hair. In a new five-part documentary, Michaela, now 28, and a mother of two, narrates her journey into and out of crime, and here she tells BBC Three in her own words what life's been like since. When people ask how I feel about it now, it feels like I'm thinking about a different person. I can't relate to that person now. How was I like that? I just accepted things I didn't feel comfortable with, but felt too shy to say anything about. Those 3 years in prison did so much to make me the person I'm now, with the mindset and morals I have now. Drugs were an escape from reality. My feelings on using drugs have massively changed. When I was around drugs at the time in Ibiza, I didn't think it was a big deal. It was my first holiday alone and I was thinking about having a good time. I didn't do any research and I didn't think of the harm that could come to me or people around me. Now I'm like, those things I put into my body without question. How am I still alive? It's really scary when you think about it. If everything happened to me, what would happen to my children? Becoming a parent changed me as well. When I was younger, I was using drugs as an escape from reality. I think it's really important for us to think about that and parents to educate their children as well. I wish we had more drug education at school, or my family were more educated to teach me, and I wouldn't been a bit more scared. I was very lively, live. I was very live. Naive. I was very naive when I was 19. I didn't think anything bad could happen to me. I didn't suspect people. I just had this fairy tale of an unrealistic world which is quite different from how I see it now. I grew up thinking I could trust people. I never questioned things. I just believed everything and trust people way too easily. We shouldn't be like that. Not everybody has got your best intentions. Strangers don't care about you. You need to be a bit suspicious of people and have your guard up. It's about listening to your gut feeling. I had a gut feeling it was wrong, and I ignored it. Your body always knows something is off. The alarm bells didn't start to ring until I was getting ready to go to Peru. I flew from Ibiza to Majorca really high, and I just thought it was an adventure. It was only when I started to sober up that I thought, oh my god, what the heck am I doing? In prison, I learned to stand up for myself. I was alone when I got to Peru. I realized how deep this was. I didn't know how to get myself out of it. I don't know if it's true that people were watching me all the time, but I really believe that. I think we were being watched all times. I tried to tell them the cattle members we met my fears and said, I don't think this is going to work. And they said it wasn't a big deal, that I was overthinking things. I started to question myself, thinking, is it normal for me to be questioning this? Anytime I brought up these feelings, it was pushed away, like you were really young, you were just being dramatic. It was like my games. I was scared of what might happen to me if I did try and walk away. It was actually being in prison that made me start to stand up for myself more. But even that took a couple of years there for me to feel secure enough to stand up for myself and not let people take advantage of me. I feel like my experience in prison was over glamorized. Glamorized by the past. They missed the point of why I wanted to start running a beauty salon here and become the delegate. It was to prove to myself that I could stand up for myself, and I wanted to push myself to do that. Yes, my hair. I didn't know for a while that it became a meme. I just put my hair up quickly on the way to the airport. It was really early and I hadn't slept. I didn't have access to water to wash it. And when I was transferred from the holding cell to prison and got to speak to my family, they were like, what's going on with your hair? Everyone's talking about your bun. It was funny. Then all the prisoners wanted their hair like that. They say, Michael's hair, I guess that kind of updo wasn't something they'd seen before. I got asked if I'm still trafficking. It was really hard getting back to normal. When I first got home, everything felt so normal. It was like I'd only been there yesterday, but I didn't feel normal anymore. I didn't feel like the person that they knew. Everyone knew who I was and what I'd done, and I was afraid of the judgment. I'm not an awful dangerous person. I had jobs, but I never make it through more than one shift. They say I got too much attention and they have to let me go. One guy interviewing me said, I know who you are. I know what you've done. Are you definitely done with that? You're not trafficking anymore. The first university I applied to accept me, but then withdrew my application because they said I could be a danger to their young students. I felt so downhearted. When I got back home, I wanted to study criminology
Criminology.
criminology to study criminology. When I was in prison, we've have psychologists coming in, and every time I spoke to them, I just felt they didn't understand. How could they possibly understand? I felt like it would be good for me to do something like that because I can relate to how they're feeling and how they might feel when they come out, but I can also help them see it doesn't have to define them and you can get to a better place. I applied to study criminology
Criminology.
criminology to study criminology at your university, but I struggled. It felt too close to home, so I switched. I'm now doing business with Spanish and Mandarin. Spain, Spain is where I'd ultimately like to be. It's different way of life. It's more relaxed. I can meet people there who don't know who I am, and I really miss that. I know the stuff that happened there was bad, but I love the culture and the language and taking my kids there. I want my children to be cultured and to see the world. So when they get to the age of 19 or 20, they have traveled and be more aware. They hopefully have the life skills I didn't have as 19. I want them to have the things I feel a little growing up. Fred Styles Fabulous. How to decorate your rental on a budget. Since the pandemic hit, we've all been spending more time in our homes than ever, and for the majority of young people, known as Generation Rent, this means being confined to rental properties where space is often sparse and walls are blank.
Sparse.
Sparse and walls are blank. On Instagram, a few scores gives users a window into strangers' beautifully decorated homes. So it's no surprise that official figures from September 2020 showed that in the UK, as sales in clothing stores fell, DIY sales soared. But for renters, familiar warnings from landlords of lost living candles or even putting a picture up is enough to put them off any kind of decorating of their own. Is it worth the effort and money when you stay is always temporary? In BBC Free's new makeover show, Fabulous, co-hosts Wendy Williams and Taylor West set out to show young people that they can make their rental properties their own and on a budget. Taking an unloved property and a group of housemates, design experts Wendy transforms drew rooms into something stylish for the cause of a light out. Wendy only got sent a couple of pictures. Then, when we got there, there's so many things that are different from the photos. We were getting completely characterized by a lot of these properties, but that's the reality for a lot of people our age. We spoke to Winnie
Tyler.
and Tyler about their top tips for making your rental feel like home. Ask your landlord if you can decorate. Winnie, we got the landlord's permission for each episode. It's important to talk to your landlord. I think landlords are a lot more flexible nowadays and open to people getting creative. Tyler, never in my life have I ever seen anybody paint the ceiling the same color as the walls, and that's what Winnie does. She puts together these colors like imagine going into art class in school and then just tipping over a load of paint and then she's like, yeah, that's perfect. Color completely changed the room. If they say no, Winnie, you have to be really conscious that when you leave, you can put it back and the landlord's going to be happy. But if you are not allowed to paint the walls and you can't go to while there's so many fun things you can do, upcycling furniture and creating a really dramatic difference in a space with just small objects. Tyler, I think it's working out your boundaries, like what you can do within the space, because obviously some of the praise and landlords will be like, no, absolutely not. You are lost decorating, but I think there's so many different ways within that space to mask it. Really, things like curtains. I think when you're renting, you think I don't want to put new curtains up. I don't want to spend money on that. But in some of the episodes, we were buying dust sheets, which are actually really beautiful fabric, sort of like linen. We were washing those in the washing machines with dye, and it came up with this really amazing bright colored curtains. As soon as they are up on the wall, it just makes the room feel cozy and more yours. And that's just costs about 12 quid. So just getting in those homey features, but on a really tight budget, is totally doable and it really transformed the space. Don't get over excited buying too many bees. Really, I think it's really easy to fall into this trap. I love the threatening and finding second-hand beers in charity shops and boot sales, but then I'd end up buying so many random beers that I loved it. I'd bring them home and nothing would make sense. Out of context, you love it. But then in your home, this doesn't work. So I say less is more, which sounds weird coming from me. What if your homies don't all agree, Winnie? I think that was a big part of the show. Sometimes you're working with seven housemates that have got widely different ideas, but I think with most people's interests, you can meet in the middle and someone wins with the color, but the other person wins with the accessories and what the room is used for. Upcycle furniture being thrown out. Tyler, I picked up a dinner table that was being thrown away. This week I've got a rub it done and upcycled it. I'm going to prime it and make sure it's good to go. It's like a six-seater that turns into an eight-seater. I'm gassed. Gassed. Winnie, I kept joking that Tyler was my appa- apprentice, and now he's like a fully qualified interviewer decided because of the things I make him do. Tyler, until you start doing DIY, the best place to learn is just by giving it a go and just doing it. Coronavirus infections continue to fall in the UK. The number of people testing positive for COVID-19 has continued to fall in the UK, the latest daily figures show. The UK recorded the UK recorded 29,173 new cases on Sunday, down from 48,161 logged a week earlier on the 18th of July. The number of new infections by days reported has fallen for 5 days in a row for the first time since February. It is also the first time since the start of the pandemic that a sustained drop in cases has not coincided coin, co- coincided with a national lockdown. The data at present is looking good for at least the summer, said Prof. Paul Hutter from the University of East Anglia. Today's figures do not of course include any impact of last Monday's end of restrictions. It will not be until about next Friday before the data includes the impact of this change. What could be causing the fall in case? Public Health England traded the daily figures for Sunday, saying there had been a delay in updating the government's coronavirus dashboard. It said 46,563,452 people. It said 48,563,452.
46,563,452.
It said 46,563,452 people had now had the first dose of a COVID vaccine, while 47,160,650 had received a second dose. The dashboard later updated to show there have been a further 28 deaths within 28 days of a positive test. The 7-day average of cases, which smooths out daily
Fluctuations.
fluctuations is showing a 15.4% decline compared with the week before. In Scotland, case numbers started falling earlier than in England. With some evidence, the decline may have been triggered by the football team's exit from the Europe 2020 tournaments.
Tournament.
tournaments. Although the downward trend has continued since then, there has been a lot of conversation about the football-related bounce in infections and whether we were seeing a wave within a wave, said Mark Woolhouse, professor of infectious disease epidemiology at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Dove is now starting to look like it's a longer-term trend. Longer-term trend. We haven't seen any sign of case picking up since the football finished. The figures show the number of people taking COVID tests has fallen over the past 4 nights, which scientists say could explain some of the drop in reported case numbers, but is very unlikely to be the only factor. Better weather all over the past 4 nights across much of the country may also have helped as more socializing took place outside. The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics suggest that 92% of adults in the UK now have antibodies to the virus in their blood, either through a previous infection or at least one vaccination dose. Real-world data shows one dose of the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccine.
AstraZeneca.
AstraZeneca vaccines is around 35% effective at preventing a COVID infection with the dominant Delta variant. After the death raised to 88% for the Pfizer jab and 67% for the AstraZeneca jab. Both jabs are even more effective against hospitalization, hospitalizations, and death. The vaccines can never offer 100% protection, but as more of the population is jabbed, so there is less opportunity for the virus to infect the spread. What impact could be the 19th of July unlocking have? COVID rules in England were relaxed on 19 July, removing social distancing restrictions in bars and restaurants and allowing nightclubs to reopen. Any rise in infections linked to that unlocking is unlikely to show up in the daily case numbers for some days to become. In other countries, such as the Netherlands and Spain, the reopening of nightclubs has been followed by the sharp rise in infections, and in some areas the policy was quickly revised. Some scientists say the impact of unlocking in England is extremely hard to predict, but could be offset by a reduction in younger children mixing at schools closed for the summer holidays. If I was a betting man, I would now say that the impact of the 19th of July will not be sufficient to start case numbers increasing again, but I cannot be certain, said Paul Hunter, professor of medicine at the University of East Anglia. Others are more cautious. Professional Will House from Edinburgh University said there may well be another rise in case this summer. There are at least 8 million adults who have had no vaccination at all, plus most children under 18. There is still a lot of material for the virus to work with, and if the change in behavior is dramatic enough, then we could see case increase again. What about the impact on hospitals? Since the start of the pandemic, a rise in infections has already led, some weeks later, to a corresponding increase in hospitalizations and deaths. The vaccine rollout has significantly weakened that relationship, but has not broken it completely. As of 22nd of July, there were 5,001 COVID patients in hospital across the UK, up from a low of 871 on the 27th of May, but still well below the 39,254 in hospital at the height of the winter wave in January. The time lag between infections and hospital admissions means that number is likely to continue to rise over at least the next week, even if infections continue to fall. Trying to predict what will happen in the longer term is a much more difficult task for data scientists and epidemiologists. Most agree that there is unlikely to be a defined endpoint to this pandemic. Instead, the disease may become endemic, meaning it continues to circulate at a lower level in pockets of the population with smaller spikes driven by changes to behavior and seasonal effects. Earlier this month, the NHS was given the green light to start planning a COVID vaccine boost program to try to minimize another wave of infections this winter. Scientists serving on the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization recommended 30 million of the most vulnerable should receive a third dose. They will include all adults aged 50 and over and one over 16 who qualifies for a flu jab. This is very difficult phrase of epidemic to predict, and very careful surveillance and monitoring will remain important for weeks and months to come, said professional Woodhouse. There is nothing yet that undermines the government's decision to unlock on the 19th of July, but we will have to continue to watch.